You plug your phone into the wall, and for a fleeting second, a startled little face stares back at you in shock. You look up at a stucco ceiling, and an entity emerges from the chaotic noise. This bizarre glitch is not an accident of your imagination. It is an ancient and aggressive alarm system. For our earliest ancestors, missing a hidden predator meant immediate death. Evolution heavily favoured a paranoid brain that generates constant false positives over one that waits to confirm a fatal threat. Today we will explore the terrifying origins of this psychological shadow and why our minds remain permanently haunted. To walk through the modern world is to be endlessly and silently watched by things that are not alive. You walk through a parking lot, and the aggressive slanted headlights of a modern truck glare at you with distinct hostility. This phenomenon is known as pareidolia. It is the deep psychological tendency to extract profound meaning, specifically faces, from highly ambiguous visual stimuli. In our sanitized synthetic environments, this quirk manifests as a ghostly cognitive glitch. It is entirely counterproductive to our daily lives today. Our brains are squandering massive amounts of metabolic energy and neural bandwidth to process the emotional state of a piece of burnt toast, a cheese grater, or a jagged rock formation. We live in geometric, sterile environments entirely devoid of predators, yet our brains remain involuntarily haunted. The true discomfort lies in the sheer impossibility of overriding the system. Once you see the face hidden in the electrical outlet, you cannot unsee it. Your conscious, rational mind is entirely subjugated by older, deeply paranoid neural circuitry. This constant low-grade animism creates a bizarre modern anxiety. We project intent and emotion onto unfeeling matter, accidentally empathizing with inanimate garbage. To understand why our brains fiercely hallucinate these faces, we must look to the merciless mathematics of evolutionary survival. Evolution does not optimize for accurate reality. It optimizes for survival. This biological reality is perfectly encapsulated in error management theory, often referred to by scientists as the Smoke Detector Principle. It dictates how living creatures process severe environmental uncertainty. When passing a visually ambiguous environment, like a tangle of vines or dappled shadows, an ancient hominid brain could make two types of errors. A false negative means assuming the pattern in the dark brush is just blowing leaves. It is actually a leopard. The cost of this error is absolute. You are eaten, and your genetic line abruptly ends. A false positive means assuming the pattern in the brush is a leopard, but it is just leaves. The cost is a brief spike in cortisol and a moment of slight physical retreat. Evolution heavily favoured the brain that generated an overwhelming number of false positives. Our modern tendency to see faces in car grilles is the direct result of an ancient and hypersensitive predator detection system. We are the direct descendants of the most paranoid apes. The hominids who paused to rationally analyse whether a shadow was a face or a rock did not survive long enough to become our ancestors. We traded visual accuracy for a hypersensitive pattern recognition system that assumes the presence of a hidden agent until proven otherwise. Imagine the visceral sensory reality of the African savannah 1.5 million years ago. It is twilight, the absolute most dangerous time of day. The harsh equatorial sun is dipping below the horizon, and the world is dissolving into low contrast greys and deep stretching shadows. You are a relatively slow biped with soft tissue. You do not have fangs, protective armour, or nocturnal vision. The cooling air smells of dry dust and crushed vegetation. You are deeply vulnerable in the approaching darkness. A breeze moves through the tall savanna grass, creating a chaotic, unending sea of shifting lines and sharp shapes. In this dim environment, visual information is highly degraded. Apex predators like the saber-toothed cats and ancient leopards were perfectly camouflaged ambush hunters. They did not announce their presence. They hid silently in the visual noise. The absolute most lethal cue you could possibly detect was a pair of forward-facing eyes locked entirely onto you. The feeling of being watched was a direct precursor to immediate violence. If an infant strayed too far from the flickering safety of the firelight, a mother had only fractions of a second to react. Her ability to instantly recognize the symmetrical arrangement of two eyes and a mouth hidden in the dark brush was the only thing standing between her child and a brutal end. The brain had to work with terrifying speed, piecing together a face from almost zero information. Living with this constant invisible threat meant existing in a perpetual state of exhausting hypervigilance. Neuroimaging and behavioral anthropology have deeply documented the biological architecture of this survival reflex. Using functional magnetic resonance imaging, researchers have finally proven that pareidolia is not a playful anomaly of human imagination. It is a violent physical triggering of the right fusiform face area located deep within the temporal lobe. The brain processes fake faces using the exact same dedicated neural hardware it uses to process real, living human faces. This confirms the reflex is permanently hardwired. Event-related potential brainwaves show that the human mind recognizes a face in an inanimate object in just 170 milliseconds. The sheer blinding speed of this processing indicates that this is a preconscious reflex optimized purely for avoiding sudden death. The left hemisphere of your brain analyzes fine visual details, but the right hemisphere fiercely asserts dominance to leap to the holistic conclusion of a face. The brain pulls the alarm before it even knows what it is looking at. Scientific studies reveal that we do not just passively see static faces in random objects. Our brains involuntarily calculate their exact line of sight. We instinctively assess whether the inanimate object is looking directly at us, underscoring the ancient survival need to detect a stalking predator peering through the brush. Furthermore, humans apply complex social and emotional evaluations to these objects within milliseconds. We instantly judge whether a smudge on the plaster wall is feeling aggressive or friendly. This deeply conserved evolutionary survival mechanism predates humanity itself by millions of years. Non-human primates, like rhesus monkeys, also experience facial pareidolia. They will fixate intensely on the illusory eyes of inanimate objects in their environment. Furthermore, human infants, mere hours after birth, will track a basic pattern of 3 dots resembling 2 eyes and a mouth, far longer than any other complex shape. The template for face detection is genetically pre-installed prior to any real-world experience. The systemic cost we pay today for carrying this ancient evolutionary code is a profound and unseen psychological friction. We are walking around with a hyper-vigilant, predator-detecting radar system left permanently switched on in a world cluttered with billions of complex human-made shapes. The physiological toll is a subtle but persistent visual exhaustion. Our modern brains are bombarded by synthetic stimuli that constantly trigger the fusiform face area without our permission. Every car passing by on the street, every oddly shaped designer handbag, and every wall socket triggers a rapid microcycle of detection, threat assessment, and false alarm. While we do not consciously register the daily fatigue, our neural circuitry is endlessly firing and processing phantoms. Psychologically, this ancient survival code leaves a dark, melancholic residue known as apophenia. This is the human tendency to perceive profound and meaningful connections between entirely unrelated things. Because our brains are so terrified of missing a hidden threat, we are naturally prone to seeing conspiracies, ghosts, and supernatural entities where absolutely none exist. Pareidolia is the deep visual root of our susceptibility to superstition. We feel a profound, misplaced loneliness when surrounded by unfeeling matter. So our biology conjures faces in the clouds to keep us company, or to keep us entirely terrified. We project human traits onto objects to make an unpredictable environment feel safe and predictable. This behavior is a deep psychological coping mechanism, originating in the lethal, high-threat environments of our distant past. We conquered the top of the food chain, paved over the wild, tall grass of the savannah, and successfully eliminated the ancient apex predators that once hunted us in the dark. Yet, because of the inescapable wiring of our own minds, we are still hunted by the ghosts of our past, forever locking eyes with the dead plastic and plaster of the modern world.